Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we're speaking with Katrina Markoff, CEO, creator, and storyteller of Vosges Chocolat, a Chicago-based luxury chocolate brand. Katrina is a world traveler who uses her global experiences to bring culture, intuition, and joy to her customers through chocolate. With 3 boutiques, an e-commerce platform, and international patrons, Katrina is one of the most successful chocolatiers in the industry. Join us today as we chat with Katrina about her creative process and how she uses chocolate to open minds, bring people together, and make the world a better place. It's making me smile just seeing you. Welcome, Katrina. How are you?
Thank you, Kirk. I'm doing well. It's so nice to be with you.
It's great to see you. So you're in Chicago right now, so a little chilly?
Very chilly. I think the low is 5 degrees today.
Ouch, ouch. And we were feeling bad. We've got maybe a foot of snow here in Boulder, Colorado, but it's not that cold. So we'll try to warm it up with a great conversation. I have so much to say. It's for our audience. We first met over 20 years ago, and you were just getting started, and here you are 23 years later, so successful, and it's such a cool story, and the way you tell it makes it even better. So before we get going, I have to pick my questions because I've got so many, but let's talk about, quote, bring peace to the world through chocolate, unquote. Absolutely love it. So simple but complicated and powerful, right? What's that mean to you?
Yeah, I think when I first started creating these chocolates with ingredients from all over the world, curry that I had found from India and wasabi from Japan and paprika from Hungary, I was like, wow, this is like bringing all the world's cultures into one box in such a harmonious, symbiotic way. Like, can this storytelling bring more peace to the world through chocolate? Because this is not about politics, this is about food, and these are places maybe that maybe don't always get along, or people judge or whatever, but can bringing them together through the medium of chocolate be a source of peace? And so that was really the idea.
Oh, and I love that, because where there's food, there's people, right? And there's
Yeah.
culture, and there's getting along, and sometimes not getting along. I love that. And again, I'm so excited. Over the years, I've made I've used you to make so many people happy when they receive your chocolates. Honestly, so thank you for that. You started your company 1998, so almost 24 years ago, and your creations, right, your inspiration are some of the most delectable, praised combinations, strange combinations, right, on the planet. Works of art, as we say in the industry. So I believe you attended Vanderbilt, you studied chemistry, I believe. So that leads me to the first question, and we'll get to your time in Paris. But what exactly is chocolate alchemy? Am I saying that right? Alchemy.
Yeah. So when I think about what I do with chocolate and what alchemy is, I alchemy, just to start there, is basically the spiritual scientific path of transformation to a higher state of being. And that can be of anything. Normally the alchemist would think of it as a personal transformation of oneself, sort of, shedding or, allowing certain parts of oneself to die so that the better parts can have space to grow and sort of seed up the next, sort of generation, the next evolution of oneself. And it's basically, an elevated state of being, of really could be anything. And when we do chocolate, we don't do it just because it should taste good. We do it for a true experience. So, the packaging, the energetics of each food that's selected that's going into the chocolate, we run the chocolates through a vibrational frequency tunnel of 528 hertz, which is a love frequency. while it's doing the crystallization from liquid to solid. And, we do a lot of clearing of energy and sort of, blessings in the space where we do the work. And so that energy, though it is invisible, is somewhat tangible in the feelings and the senses. And so that's really an elevated state of chocolate is the idea and the goal of what I try to make. And that which can get you into the senses. And when you can get into the senses because you're paused, because it's a little bit different looking, a little bit different ingredients, not what you would expect, deeper story, that through that process, I believe when you're present in that process through the senses, you get to that place that I call the sixth sense, or that divine essence, that voice that's very wise that we all have within ourselves.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so
I just
I know
love it. There's so much thought and passion that's going into the product that many people might not know, but certainly appreciate, right? Um,
yeah,
we try to encourage employees, for example, to be more concerned with having relationships with each other and with, students that they serve, rather than just being transactional, right? And that's what this sounds like to me, that this is well beyond just creating a product. This is creating an experience for the
yeah. I
consumer.
mean, I really do feel like I found chocolate as my medium, and I love touching and holding ingredients and transforming them into other states. But ultimately, I think I'm an experience maker, a storyteller, and an energizer. That's really what I'm trying to do, only to reflect that into somebody else. And if they are interested in seeing it, I think they'll see it. If they just want to taste the chocolate, that's great too. And you can just keep it at that level.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
intention
yeah.
is a bit deeper.
No, I absolutely love that. So Vanderbilt, and then you went to Paris and you went to culinary school. And I'm just really curious. So you go to culinary school in France, one of the best places to go to culinary school, right? Was the goal to become a chef, a pastry chef, anything specific? And is that where you fell in love with chocolate?
Well, I never loved chocolate as a kid. I didn't have good chocolate as a kid. When I was at Vanderbilt, I wasn't a great student. I think I probably had dyslexia and ADHD, but just was kind of creative enough to kind of get my way into being accepted to that school. And then when I was there, though, I realized, oh my God, I am never going to get a job. I'll never be able to interview in these ways that my friends were easily able to do and wear their suits and go, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do with my life? And I kept being called to what I call this, to communicate through food. Because I had a little cake business when I was in high school, and I ran our little garage sale when I was really little. And then in college, I was always trying to have dinner parties, and that was my way of connecting with people. So I thought, okay, I should then be a chef. That's what I should be. So I'm going to go to culinary school. Well, I got to culinary school in Paris, and then, realized that I wasn't a super linear person. I didn't necessarily like always having to do, B after A. I wanted to kind of mix it up, but they didn't really like that unless you were the head chef. And there's quite a route in Europe anyway to become the head chef. Like, I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
never call myself a chef. When I came back from my trip, I was like, I'm not a chef. I'm just a cook. Like, a chef is a chef. I'm just okay. So I think I kind of had almost failure in the kitchen, if you will, because it wasn't really my my process of creating. And I wanted to have like something really, unique. I wanted to do something really unique, but it didn't start and stop at the plate. It was like the whole thing was important to me. So like the space, so it was like, well, I can't, how am I going to do that? And then I thought, oh, I guess I'm just not going to be a chef. So now what am I going to do? And when I was at El Bulli, it was really the first time I started to play with chocolate. And I remember we had to make these really challenging challenging dexterously these little you take the sort of the entremet plastic wrap, and then make little cylinders and put the chocolate and then tape it and then make these little cylinders, fill them with coconut milk and I just started thinking like, oh, it's really kind of cool. Like you don't think of like this liquid of coconut milk coming out on the plate like that. And so that was kind of, and also of course being at Abuli in general was such a radical departure from my time in France. And again, this idea of like experiential food, more than the molecular gastronomy there, it was more like the whole experience of both the food and the place where the back of the house chefs work, which was absolutely gorgeous and unconventional. There was no gas up in the restaurant because it was on, mountain. You couldn't drill for the gas pipes, and it was all electric, and it carved bull's head and bird on a branch of wood in the pastry. All the refrigerators were glass door. And I remember just thinking, wow, this is what I now know as culture, was really, really honoring the chefs in a way that I had not seen working in, the back of the house in some of the restaurants in Paris. And I really liked that idea of like, that sort of full vertical of, pride from the ingredients that are selected to the way you're surrounding your chefs, to then of course how it's plated and then experienced in a very unusual way. So I think that became like the disruptor for me about like, there's something different here. And I didn't know that I was going to do chocolate until, much, much, much later. I just noticed while I was traveling around the world after that, stage in Abuli, that there wasn't a lot of innovation on the sweet side and the pastry side, and that most of what I was seeing was on the cuisine side, where it would be a little bit more innovative, but still not like, as radical as Abuli. But in general, I felt like, okay, there's something missing here in pastry. And again, this was, 25 years ago, so long time.
And we should say though, you're so humble. I mean, Ferran Adria in Spain, El Bulli, I mean, will go down in history as a temple of cuisine or a laboratory of cuisine. So for you to be able to experience what was going on there long before anybody knew what was going on there is pretty spectacular. You said, and I love this for our students. You just said this: start and stop at the plate. That's so intuitive. That's brilliant, really, right? So you knew yourself at the time.
I mean, I think because I wasn't a conventional learner, that I had to develop other systems for making decisions in my life. And so I found my intuition at a very young age. And I would believe that everything around me was a sign and a directional sign. So I would just interpret that, for myself as I would go in my own way. And it sort of led me down my path, throughout most of my life, although I did take a little time off from following it and got into trouble. But
we all did.
That's like, I guess that was like, I was trying to make sense of everything that was happening around me. And I remember usually when there was a little bit of fear or tension in a decision, because I remember when my friend was like, let's go work at this really crazy place in Spain. And she started telling me what they were doing. And it was so opposite of being in Paris. I was like, I don't know. That seems like maybe a step back or to the left too far or something. And like later I learned, especially in my own work, like that kind of tension or that kind of like doesn't seem quite like right is really good. It's like intriguing, it's that intriguing, sort of makes you feel like you're going into this new land. And I think when you look at the work I do with chocolate, it's very much like opposites and tension: bacon and chocolate for the first time, curry and chocolate for the first time, olive and chocolate for the first time. back in the day, that sounded disgusting, it sounded weird, but because it was set on this beautiful box, it was like, oh, can't be that bad. Shoot, yeah. So, that tension piece usually is an indication of something really cool is going to happen here.
Keeps you on your toes too, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
Keeps you awake, right?
Yeah. You're like, not sure if you're in the, I don't know for sure phase.
Yeah.
But you feel, it feels like it should be good, but it's counter to maybe what's going on in the culture, or what seems like it's okay or right. And that's where you have to have such a strong inner compass, because when you have that, you can reassure yourself, like, no, this is right. I know it doesn't seem quite right, and it's totally different, and people think it sounds weird, but like, if you think it's right, it's right. So keep going.
It's a great message for students too. We at least I do. I tell students a lot. It's okay to take a little bit of a risk, calculated risk. Be dangerous. It's okay. I grew up the son of a pastry chef, and it was pretty regimented. It was this is it. This is the recipe. Don't venture from it. Probably the reason I stepped to the other side of the stove, right, and got into the more creative side of cuisine. I've read that you were inspired by, I think, the book, if I get the name right, Lead with Your Heart, the Rest Will Follow. Did I get that right?
Yeah. It was like, I think it was like, follow your heart and success. What was it called? Follow your heart and success will follow, or something like that.
Beautiful title.
Honestly, I think, I think it was self-published by a woman that I had known when I was in, late high school and college. And I was expressing to her that I just was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. I feel like I'm a failure because I have this degree from this college, and I want to go to culinary school. And at that time, that was like a vocational thing to do. You didn't really go to culinary school after you went to college. So that was the first tension point. This doesn't seem right from the optics outside. And she's like, you don't need to look at the optics outside. You need to look at the optics inside. And that was where in the book, there were these exercises that you would do where you'd go out into nature and you'd pen and paper and you'd write down like just free flow connection of the things that you loved and start with that. And I really focused on horseback riding and cooking. And I kept coming back to cooking being the right, path, though it was unconventional. It was really where my heart was. And I felt like, okay, I don't know why I want to do this exactly. I don't know where I'm going to go with this, but this is I feel like this is my next step. And that's when I convinced my mom that I needed to go to cooking school.
And so let's talk about the chocolate piece. Is this where the inspiration just sort of came from? Then you came back to the States and started experimenting?
So I was going to do a cookbook with my friend who I was traveling with on our trip around the world. And she didn't really like my style. And her dad was a big publisher of books. So she did her book and I did nothing. Oh no, I don't want to be a chef in a restaurant. Now I don't have a book to write. So I'm left with no purpose. But the resistances tend to be the best guides, when you have a failure point or missed expectation. And so I was working for my uncle in Dallas, who had just started a company that was like a kind of a mail catalog first burgeoning online business for home goods. And he said, during the fourth quarter, people buy a lot of food. So let's find some great, foodstuffs for the fourth quarter. So in Dallas, they have a gourmet food mart. And I went in there and I saw a ton of chocolate, loads of chocolate, but all the same story, like my grandmother's recipe, World War II recipe, kind of origin story. And there was nothing that was fresh. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, there's a real hole to fill here. And I knew about this foodie movement. Of course, it was happening in the States. slowly Wine Spectator and Cigar Aficionado magazines. I remember those coming out, and then Starbucks being, established, as sort of second wave coffee. And there was this foodie movement. And I thought, well, right now, America just seems to know about like French cuisine and Italian cuisine, but doesn't really know that much more after that. And so with those data points and my understanding of sort of fine dining and traveling the world and seeing those influences of ingredients, I went home and I had this beautiful necklace on from the Nagaland tribes in India. And I just looked at that necklace, and for some reason I was like, I'm going to pay tribute and homage to the Nagaland, and I'm going to go make a curry coconut milk chocolate truffle. And I'm going to use all these beautiful cultures and these experiences I had as the inspiration and the connection to create a chocolate that's rooted really in a story. And I remember making like 22 different chocolates that night. And I brought them into the office in Dallas, and Dallas was a big Dickey's barbecue town. And people thought it sounded awful and gross. And I was like, just try it. And then I had this woman who picked up the chocolate very cautiously and tasted it and was like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. This is amazing. Let me try the one with the wasabi, or the one with, the olive oil. And it became this kind of this opening of the mind that I saw, like opening of the heart mind to new ideas. And I thought, now this is very powerful. And that's kind of how I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do chocolate.
Was that the first truffle? That was your first truffle?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
The Naga, the curry and coconut. And that's when I was like, I started researching about, the history of cacao. And then I became even more sure that this is what I wanted to work with, because it was sacred plant medicine, the native, Mayan and Aztec Olmecs, really revered this to the highest level of raising your vibe, bringing it into your heart space, connecting you to the above to get messages, opening your mind. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much synchronicities into what I'm seeing, how I'm using it in a very new way, as a confection versus the way they used it, which was more of a bitter elixir. But it sort of reassured me like, okay, I am on the right path. This is a sign. This is a sign that I'm seeing this, and this is in its history. So that's when I was like, I have to work with this. This is the food this is the most powerful food, and I'll work with this one. And as a person who probably has ADHD and all of these things, it also helps me really focus when I was like one substrate, one medium. And then from there, I could do almost anything with it, because it's so, the range savory to sweet is so vast. But I wasn't really doing it necessarily just for the food experience. It was for the transmission of other stories and getting people to engage ultimately, like I said, with their senses by having really beautiful, purple packaging and like really beautiful ribbon, and the layers of the stories and the insert cards, and then of course the look of the chocolates.
It's the whole experience. I remember the first time that I started seeing your product, and that I spent some time with our colleagues, Chef Patrick and Kathy, and I noticed Chef Pascal was someone that I, traveled around the country with, right? And all of a sudden, I open up the box and there's a Chef Pascal truffle. And was that fun? Was that by design? Like I learned a lot, and I'm going to honor you by naming one of my truffles.
He was one of my favorites. Yeah.
He was one of everyone's favorite.
He was just the dimples, so sweet and funny. And he'd always say like a little bit more kirsch all the time, and he was just very gleeful
and talented
and super talented. And I loved how he could be really warm and also really talented. Like that wasn't always the case in the kitchen. There's a lot of ego, and he was just a beautiful person. He was always, ready to laugh. He was great guy.
I love that. I love it. Great memories. So let's I love when you kind of reflect a little bit. And when we think about your work with different flavors, I'd love for you to speak to how you see chocolate as a connector for relationships, for experiences, that sort of thing.
Yes. Well, I see it both, sort of metaphysically and, well, and then commercially, when you say the word chocolate, 99% of the people's ears are like, oh, chocolate. I would love a chocolate. It's eaten in a way that you eat with just your fingers. Typically, it's you often eaten alone. So this reverence for the food kind of gives me a leading edge, on people's interest in it. So it's kind of universally lovable. But when you do the metaphysical component to the history of cacao, and you look at how the science behind it, um, cacao has health benefits that the Mayans and the Aztecs knew before about heart health and vascularity and all of that. But metaphysically, maybe partially because of science, of course, it would release, those endorphins that made you feel lighter and happier. And, I say that's like kind of taking you out of the fear state and into the heart space where you're more open, to forgive yourself, to forgive other people, to just connect. And then cacao has cannabinoids in it, which, makes you feel more calm. And then there's some, they say psychedelic effects to cacao, in its whole form. Maybe yes, maybe no, but the idea of it opening your mind, whether that's through increased blood flow, or, however you want to kind of go deep onto the psychedelics, but to have access to the above, it's just an amazing food. And when you combine it with ritual, where we have like a self-love ritual and a new beginnings ritual and a protection ritual and for prosperity, there's all different kinds. When you combine food and particularly chocolate, which was used in ceremony for raising your vibe and for bringing love into your heart and giving you energy, that's really, really powerful. Your body says, oh, we're doing something really special here. We're like creating intention. We're drinking something super delicious in a very specific way. That's kind of a little bit of quantum there, like how are we magnetizing our thoughts to manifest through this process of, drinking and creating this chocolate, or just tasting this chocolate. And so I am always thinking about how can I use chocolate for purpose, cacao for purpose, because ultimately, I don't think I want to, I'm pretty, I guess, deep. I want to do something deeper than just the pleasure of taste. I want to go way further. Everything should have a reason for being and for being, tasted. And how do you put your intention into your food before you taste it? And how can that kind of help manifest what you want in your life? Because we are in a constant state of creation, whether we think it or not, we are, because we create our whole world. We choose our thoughts that we believe or don't believe. And, the mental health piece, as much as you can talk about heart health and all that is in cacao, but I think the mental health components of eating chocolate in a certain way through the guided tastings that we do and connecting with breath and then going through all the sensory cues of okay, I'm going to belly breathe to trigger my vagus nerve and relax my nervous system and really quiet my mind. Because when you can get the mind to slow the heck down and let the feelings have room to feel, you get really connected, really grounded. And through that grounding and that connection to yourself, that's when you can hear your voice. and not the voice, like I said, of the mind, which is usually a fear or a worry voice, but the truth voice. And so like, because I find that, I want to share that, with people, and it's, yummy to do it through chocolate.
It's so well said. I mean, riveting. When does the documentary come out? When does the movie come out? I feel like I'm on a movie set. I mean, it's so riveting. Speaking of which, so many celebrities love your product, right? So outside of the gal in Dallas that tasted your first truffle, has there been just like a moment that just blew your mind? Someone's reaction to one of your chocolates that really stands out?
No, it's funny. Like, I've had a lot of that, but like none of it, like, I don't know. I, I never like, maybe this is a problem I have, but I never like take that in. Like, I'm always like, okay, but like, I never think anything I do is good enough. So it's like, I'm constantly, nothing's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always like, could be better, could be better, could be
How do
better.
we make it better?
Yeah. How do we make
Yeah,
it better? So
yeah,
like, I never
yeah.
like I it is a flaw of mine. I really should maybe take it in, but like, I'm just trying to like, there's always room to do better. So that's one of the things that allow, I think, me to actually create the amount of things that we do, because I believe nothing is perfect. So I will get it to a place where it's about 80% there, and then I can always, improve it, because I don't know that perfect ever exists. And if I said it had to be perfect, I probably wouldn't produce a dang thing. And you have to give space to yourself to improve and to say, it's okay for right now. We're going to make it better, but let's just start. A lot of it is like starting. When you look at the first box we ever had of our chocolate, it is embarrassing. It is like, cannot believe, but I didn't have money. I didn't have resources. I didn't raise, funding. So it was what it was, but that's where the passion can kind of make up, where you don't have the funds to have the pretty perfect looking box or branding or whatever, because you'll get to that,
Yeah, yeah. Such a good message for people listening. I love the passion and the continued pressure on yourself. Others might call it humility, and that's okay. That's a beautiful characteristic, to be humble
Mhm.
like that. Keeps you motivated. You've mentioned this notion of the power of collaboration. The other day when we were talking, you mentioned connection time. Working with people with energy helps you to be creative and you to focus. Can you talk a little bit more about how important the people around you are to producing your product?
Yes. I mean, I think having the right hearts and open minds around you are really important, because if people don't buy in to your vision of like, because this is a really like an unusual thing to talk about, like the energetics of food is not really something most people talk about. So like, as I say, like, the reason we're sourcing the best in class ingredients is not just because it's the most expensive or like has the name. It's because the producers behind it are so loving to this ingredient, because it's so valuable, because they want to be so proud of it, because it comes from an IGP region or an AOC or whatever. There's something in that. And it's not just the money, it's actually like the pride. And like, so when we come back and then make ingredients with it and spend more money on it and then create the packaging around it, you want to have people that are like aligned and see that we're trying to create deep experience, and they have to kind of be in it to really express it. And so my head designer here is so in it, and I would say we are producing the best, packaging. This era with Liz is really like the best we've ever done, because she is so into this, understanding sacred geometry and alchemy, um and the idea of transformation to help people like be always in states of, making themselves better. And so because she's into it, then you can see it and feel it in the art. But
Yeah.
if I've had people that aren't, and it's just a struggle. I feel like I'm having to fight for my, idea or belief. And so for a long time, like I didn't do a lot of the meditation and the rituals and stuff because I just didn't have the right environment and support. And so like I was saying to you yesterday, like when you have to become an entrepreneur, you want to be careful to hire people that have really aligned hearts, but are really smart too. But they don't necessarily have to have done the job before if they have like just good common sense and smarts and have the heart, because that means they're going to work hard and it's going to mean they're going to figure stuff out. But if you get too caught up in fear and stuff, like you just freeze, and then you don't want to do the innovation thing and you don't want to try something new for the first time. And so, at least for me, like, because I'm always doing innovation, like having a laboratory culture is really important.
No, really, really, really well said. Along those same lines, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, is it difficult at times to balance, let's call it the business demands, right? The economics with your personal vision, never getting too far over your skis type of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say when I got into the most like troubled era of my business, when things were hard and like things didn't flow, money didn't flow, it was probably because I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. I kept thinking like, oh, that girl over there, she's how I should look because that's a female CEO of a company and she goes to those conferences and she speaks like that. So I need to be like her. And she hires all these really expensive people that come from big companies and then they grow the company to this whole dialogue. And like that was not me. So I couldn't really execute that. She can because it was probably her, but that's not me. And so I think I fell down a lot when I was trying to figure out how to be somebody else other than myself. And then when I finally kind of got back to myself, because I had made so many mistakes, it's the only thing I had left to go back to. Then it started to flow again, and I'm in state of flow again. But that's where you have to be in really good connection with yourself to know this feels right. I'm going to go with this. And, this is a learning planet. So like, you're going to make mistakes and then you got to learn fast. Don't be afraid of that because it still keeps you going in the right direction.
So well said. It's so vulnerable and so, transparent, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I was just going to ask you about balance. And I think you just answered that's how you find balance for yourself, right?
Well, I used to grind away, and like not get great results. Now, because I've had a lot of stuff go down in my life, I have to be more of a primary caregiver for my children and like the business. And so, I pick them up from school, I drop them off at school, and I still have this business that I'm running with a great team, of course. But it feels like things flow so much easier when you're aligned with like being transparent, authentic, real, and like focusing on the priorities that you can do, and then, divvying it up with your team on what they should be doing, and playing to everybody's strengths. And, I don't have I don't have to be, going to all these conferences or, whatever it is, or, that's this other part that I was trying to like be somebody else. Like I can just do it my way and like it just somehow works out. So, there's a lot of hard work that goes into starting something always, your blood, sweating, tearing it. But as you get that established, like just stay in your zone where you're like the most prolific and don't worry so much about the things you're not good at. Like kind of let that stuff go. You're always improving, but like be sure to like just keep doing the stuff that you're really like tuned into.
Such good advice. What Katrina, what are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. What am I most
Tough one.
proud of?
Besides your family.
Oh yeah. I'm like most proud. I guess I'm proud that I can, that I learned at a young age to take risks and be a maverick, really,
Oh, I
despite,
love that.
a lot of criticism from my family. Like I somehow along the way switched, and I was like, I know what I'm doing.
I got this.
I
I
got it.
got this.
And
Yeah.
and then and a lot of it was like my brother was so hard on me as a kid, and like always would tell me I wasn't good at the whatever. So it kind of makes you strong. So, like some of those adversarial moments are really important in life
Yeah. Yeah.
because they
Beautiful.
give you your
Beautiful.
lane, like I do know what I know. And I know that, and I'm clear. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I can say that well.
It goes back to the beginning. It's peace, right? It's
Yeah.
it's you have peace yourself. I just love it. We're getting a little close to the end, but before I let you go, just love chatting with you. The name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish. So, Katrina, what is the ultimate dish?
Oh, this is such a big question.
It can have chocolate in it, by the way.
It can have chocolate in it. Okay. I would say the ultimate dish for me goes, it's like one dish plate. When I was living in Paris, I went to this restaurant called L'Amboisie in the Place de Vosges, which is why Vosges is named Vosges, because I had my first chocolate experience there. I never liked chocolate before. And it's this restaurant, and they brought out like a dish, a plate at the very end of the meal. And they said, okay, this is a truffle beignet, and you have to take it in one bite. And what they did was they froze the chocolate ganache, and then they dipped it in beignet batter and fried it. And then in the process of frying it, it melted the inside. You had this donutty exterior, and then little, flakes of salt on the outside. And you bit into this like crispy, donutty, little salty, and then this burst of liquid molten chocolate. And that was like the moment I fell in love with chocolate.
Oh my, I have asked this question of many people, but I don't think that I felt the tingle that I just felt as you described that. Absolutely wonderful. Katrina, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Just delightful. Congratulations on all your success and much more continued success.
Thank you. It was wonderful. You're such a beautiful person. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Katrina. And thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.